Joining moderator Brendan Vaughan, please welcome Cheryl Dorsey, Chief Executive Officer, Echoing Green, and Kara Medoff Barnett, Managing Director, General Atlantic Foundation.
Hi, I'm Brendan. I'm just kidding. So for session 2 here, Kara, I'm going to start with you. You've seen how private equity venture has created this kind of entire ecosystem of sort of self-supporting elements, accelerators, mentorship networks, funding pipelines that turn individual entrepreneurs into kind of nodes of a really healthy all-around ecosystem. Social entrepreneurship, by contrast, often operates in sort of these funding deserts, with entrepreneurs jumping from grant to grant, kind of always wondering where's the next dollar going to come from. How do we build an infrastructure for philanthropy that is closer to the one that you've worked in PE and venture?
Thank you for the question, Brendan, and congratulations to all the solvers here. 31, 20, 25 solvers, and it's really just humbling to share this stage also with one of my heroes, Cheryl Dorsey. So thank you to Hala and everyone at MIT Solve for inviting me today. So philanthropic infrastructure, that phrase, I think, implies bureaucracy, it implies barriers, and I think that we do, infrastructure is built by humans, and I think that we should really be talking about human behavior, not just the infrastructure. So how do we behave as the philanthropists who build these systems, who build these institutions, who build these perhaps barriers? And I think that we do sometimes forget what works in investing in the private sector when we move over to the social sector, right? And all of a sudden, when we move to the social sector, we have this fear of failure that leads to paralysis instead of an embrace of some level of failure and iteration, which we really do embrace when we're investing in businesses and getting behind entrepreneurs. We get behind them for the long haul, and we help them through these speed bumps, and we help them navigate around and continue to develop and learn and iterate and grow. I think also when we move into the social sector, we tend to think about control differently. Right? At General Atlantic, where I work, we're usually minority investors. We have influence, but not control. Our hand isn't on the wheel. Instead, we are choosing and selecting and doing very rigorous selection around who we want to partner with. But then once we're partners, we're side by side. We're with you. We're behind you saying, what do you need from us? How can we add value? Not how can we redirect, right? That's not our job. I spoke recently to a leader I admire who sits on many boards in both the private sector and the social sector, and they said, my role as a board member is noses in, fingers out. My nose is in to learn, but my fingers are not in there. I've selected the people who are gonna make the good decisions. And so I think that as philanthropists, and building this infrastructure should be around trusted partnerships. And I'm sitting next to someone who General Atlantic and the General Atlantic Foundation have partnered with for 38 years. And when that happens, it's because there's real understanding and a real commitment to being in it for the long haul, certainly not trying to control, but rather saying, what do you need? How can we help? And understanding that there might be some bumps and changes of direction along the way, and then we're here to listen to the leadership, to partner with the leadership to get them through those tough times.
Well said.
Yeah, Cheryl, would you like to respond to that before I get to my first question for you?
Yeah, please. And I apologize for you folks over here that I've got my back to. Forgive me. And I'm sorry it's dark. I'd love to see your beautiful faces. But I'm really honored to be here sharing the stage with these extraordinary folks. And Kara has become a dear friend as well as a colleague. And is typical with the GA ethos, there's such humility engaged in that. General Atlantic founded Echoing Green almost 40 years ago and really created the model of early stage, high risk investing in social innovators. And it's now part of a global social movement. And without GA as one of the foundational partners, we wouldn't be sitting here along with our colleagues in the space. So deep gratitude for what General Atlantic has poured into us, and this notion of backing the entrepreneur. We would say sort of founder first, sort of putting the talent at the center of everything we do, and then sort of standing behind them, pushing them forward as we can, blocking and tackling if needed, and just doing our best to build this beloved community of folks who see tomorrow today and really do have a human-centered approach to how do we make the world more equitable for more folks. I'm not supposed to say equitable. You guys can strike that from sorry. How do you ensure opportunity for all in moving forward? So grateful to be part of the journey, be part of the part of this family.
A through line of your career has been focusing on social entrepreneurs who do come from the communities they serve. When you first started doing this isn't even my question, but I'm just curious now before I get to it, did you feel like you were alone in that, in really pushing for that, or was everybody kind of in your space already like trying to prioritize that connection as opposed to sort of outside help in these
Such a great question, and I appreciate, I love how Hala said, oh gee, I'm old. Like, I have been in this space for a really long time. So long that when I got my Echoing Green Fellowship back in 1992, we didn't know from the term social innovator. We were community service fellows.
Right, all the language is always changing.
Always changing, right? And it was, I think one of the things that General Atlantic did so beautifully was they saw all of this young talent, because back in the day, my cohort coming through Echoing Green was Wendy Kopp from Teach for America, Alan Casey and Michael Brown from City Year, Michelle Obama and Vanessa Kirsch from Public Allies, Van Jones, who we now see on CNN, but when he was coming out of Yale Law School, started the first hotline to report police abuse in this country. So we didn't know what we were called. We came together because we went home and told our parents, I'm not gonna go off to my residency in pediatrics. And my mother said, I can't die a happy Catholic. You're just disappointing the family. What are you doing? And I'm sure it's interesting that I think some of you young folks get that today, like engineer, doctor, lawyer, the whole thing. But I think one of the reasons I'm so proud of this movement is there's nothing more important today than applying your talent to these polycrises that are going to determine whether your children or your children's children have a livable planet. Like, this is how existential this work is, and social innovation is the way to get there. And I'm really proud to sort of see that social innovation has moved from the fringes to the center. And I, in this moment that we're all living in, truly believe that social innovation and populism are the same side of the flip of the same coin. We all know that these systems aren't working. They don't work for enough of us. They don't work together to solve the challenges in front of us. And everybody's upset about it. But you can have different approaches with the same diagnosis. Populism is more about nihilism and tearing things down. Social innovation is about building things, reimagining things. So no better time to be part of this movement and this work than right now. And we need all of you to be a part of it.
So, broad AI question first, and then a subset that's more specific. Do you use it? How? And do you think that it can help with some of the things you were just talking about?
Yes, yes, and yes. So I love it. I'm like a bit of a Luddite. I need every 12-year-old to help me use my phone, but I am all in on ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, just because of the productivity gains. Our organization, Echoing Green, is also testing out how we can apply AI, these large language models, in our 40 years of data to see, to help us with the selection of our fellow cohort each year. So we get about 4,500 submissions from 160 countries around the world. It almost breaks us every year to go through each of these applications. And people are coming to you with their hopes and dreams. So you owe them your time and your attention. But it is hard for a small organization to dig in and give these applications their due. So we're just trying to see, can AI support that? I will say social innovators are always ahead of the curve. Lots of our fellows are are using it. I'm thinking of Hee-Jae Lim, who started Talking Points, which is now one of the largest parent-teacher engagement platforms that uses large language models to connect parents who don't speak English as their first language to their teachers. They've translated into 140-some languages. Or Manu Chopra, who I think will be here this week, who started a company called Karya, who works on hiring indigenous women from the global south to contribute to large language models. It's an incredible thing. It would take the average low-income person in India 7 generations to save about $1,500. If you have a job at Karya, you can make that amount in less than a year. So there are all these possibilities, but always thinking about ethical AI on the flip side of that coin. But our fellows are going through that journey in real time.
Yeah, so Kara, let me ask you to answer a similar question, which is that how can philanthropy help social entrepreneurs harness the power of the technology while also kind of being mindful of the safeguards, the feedback loops, the potential risks, unforeseen and anticipated, that this technology can introduce as it scales?
Well, the potential for harm is real, but I think for this room, let's focus on the potential for transformational good. The founder of General Atlantic was a gentleman named Chuck Feeney, who Cheryl had the privilege of knowing. I did not, but I'm inspired by his words every day. And he said, the purpose of wealth is to improve the human condition. And he structured his life and his choices around that. And so I'm thinking right now, what if we decide that the purpose of AI is to improve the human condition, and we make our choices in service of that premise? And I think that many of the social innovators that Cheryl mentioned are. I think that for philanthropy, how can AI be the connective tissue to connect those innovators and entrepreneurs with one another, to connect them with funding sources, to help us meet and gather and convene and connect all of these different issue areas and geographies at warp speed in ways that before might have taken a lot of time and digging and challenges of access. This technology hopefully can help us do what Abigail talked about, which is move from isolated programs to connected, strong movements to address some of these really, really big challenges, and to move from the individual efforts that so many of you are launching and leading to how can you collaborate with one another, and how can we as philanthropists and as entrepreneur support organizations like Echoing Green and Solve be even more useful to you in real time. So that's what I'm hopeful with around AI. And I can tell you that there are so many things that it still can't do. Vilas talked a lot about the humanity, and this, engaging in dialogue with real people in real time. Sure, it can help you prep, right? It can help collect the notes afterwards and put them in nice bulleted formats, but this human interaction where new ideas are generated and where new relationships are formed, can't do that. And so I think that we need to also approach our work and approach our interaction with these tools with a real recognition of what it's good at and good for, and then not neglecting all of the really important human relationships that you're going to build over the course of these next few hours here today, and as you go back into your communities and do the important work with the people you serve.
Cheryl, I'm going to give you 2 questions. You can choose which one to answer.
Okay.
Is there a climate-specific application, AI application, doesn't have to be AI, it could just be some other kind of tech, that has you particularly excited about its potential? Or is there a lesson over your time of doing this that maybe felt relevant, particularly applicable to the challenges you faced at a previous era that feel sort of newly relevant now?
I'm always thinking about, there's so many founders in this room, and I'm always thinking about them and the work you all are doing. And it is just so difficult to do. And even though most, if not all of you, are proximate, you've got lived experience, you've got trust capital that you've accrued by working in these communities, it's still really hard to raise money. So I think venues and platforms like this at Solve are really critical to sort of raise your visibility and sort of get some of this capital unstuck, right? I was just, Echoing Green has done its own studies on capital gaps between Black and white innovators in our portfolio, but I was looking back at this 2023 McKinsey study that showed that underrepresented founders are raising only about 43% as much as their white male counterparts. So this gap is really real, and we've got to close it, given that we need all hands on deck to solve these challenges. But was just talking about one of our social innovators, Aloysius Atta, and his co-founder, Emmanuel Ade, who started this amazing agri-tech company in Africa called Farmerline, that is now one of the fastest growing agri-tech companies on the continent. And they've now worked with 1 million farmers in 44 countries. And critical to their work is the use of AI. And they built this incredible data platform that allows them to intake climate knowledge and information and get it back out to farmers to increase their yield and revenue. And that, to me, is what human-centered AI can do transformationally. And those are the stories that I think we need to keep sending as signals for others who are coming behind them.
I totally agree. And if I may add, just that finding those use cases and also just making sure that the FOMO doesn't lead you lead to mission creep for both for the social entrepreneurs as well as the funders, and then also doesn't lead you to strategic contortions, right? What is the thing you're trying to solve? And as a philanthropist or as a philanthropic institution, how do we continue to make sure that we're laser focused on the people and the problems and not contorting our application process or our decision making towards the bright, shiny, whiz-bang thing that was talked about earlier. I think that some level of FOMO is healthy and everyone should be thinking about how best to deploy, but that doesn't mean that to chase the money, you have to chase an AI solution or an AI tool that may or may not be ultimately the most relevant and useful. And I think that, again, as funders, we need to make sure that we're not encouraging those contortions.
Right. Great. Well, that is, we're out of time. That is a great note to end on. Thanks, everyone, for your attention. Thank you both for your wisdom.